Coming up on Theater Talk.
The reason why I kind of got into stand-up in the first place was I thought that was going to be a shortcut to an acting career. As Humphrey Bogart says in Casablanca about the waters, I was misinformed.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
You must be Stanley. I'm Blanche.
Oh, Stella's sister.
Yes.
Hello.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm producer Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
Michael, there's a powerful revival of A Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway.
One of the great American plays, Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire, which seems to come on Broadway periodically, but this production is one you do not want to miss, primarily because of its terrific cast. And we are very happy tonight to be joined by a superstar, Mr. Blair Underwood, making his Broadway debut, right?
Broadway debut, yep.
You know, that's a pretty risky thing to do, to make your Broadway debut as Stanley Kowalski in Streetcar Named Desire.
And I have this man, Stephen Bird, to blame for that. It is. It is, but I'm having the time of my life.
Right, right. Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
All right.
And the man who brought him in, my old friend Stephen Bird, one of the best producers, I think, on Broadway.
Thank you so much for that.
Terrific and successful revival of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof not too long ago. And now is doing Streetcar Named Desire. Right. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Good to be here, thank you.
And we have an absolutely superb and haunting and heartbreaking woman playing Blanche in this play, Nicole Ari Parker. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Hi, thank you.
You look sane sitting here. When I see you on stage, I worry about that girl.
Watch it,
So
she
when
might
I saw
seduce
you
you.
in the green room, I thought, that's her? I really didn't recognize you at all.
And then when you
Such
come
a
out of the
transformation.
play in the beginning, you think, oh, no good is going to come to this play. Sorry to say. All right, let's get back, though, to this idea, Blair, of making your debut. I mean, you are playing an iconic role that was originated by an iconic actor, Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando.
I mean, when Stephen comes to you and says, hey, would you like to, give it a go in Streetcar Named Desire? Yeah, absolutely. You're thinking, let's think this through first.
Yeah, yeah. No, you listen, you definitely walked into the tailwinds of such, I mean, an iconic performance, but also, I mean, just there are moments in that movie, in that play of Stella, of course, Marlon Brando screaming Stella,
Right.
that everybody brings to the theater. It's one of the most iconic moments in popular culture, in movies and in stage. So, yeah, a lot of nerves and not a whole lot of apprehension, because, I have so much faith in this man as a producer, and when I knew I was going to work with Nicole and Daphne Rubin Vega, who we talked about, and Wood Harris, I felt surrounded by such a great team, and of course at the helm of that is Emily Mann, our director, who's just extraordinary. So I really felt insulated in a certain sense, and do feel insulated to just really create and have fun and just put it out there.
Yeah. And Nicole, when you get the offer to play another iconic figure, Blanche, do you run right to the old movie and watch Vivien Leigh, or do you say, I cannot look at any of this stuff anymore, I'm going to have to recreate it as if it were a new part for me?
Well, the thing about Tennessee Williams for an actor is, and what Emily Mann also encouraged was, you can't get through this play without investing parts of yourself. There's just no way around it. And ultimately, like with his Stella and with my Depending on the Kindness of Strangers, it has to come from a very real place, which is ultimately each actor's own place. So inherently, I couldn't be like Vivien Leigh, although I had this tremendous amount of respect for her as an actress. I thought she was incredible in everything she did. And I kind of had to respectfully let the ghosts of Blanche pass leave the room. I was also, even stronger than Vivien Leigh was Kate Blanchett's
Right,
at BAM.
Yeah.
But right when we got to rehearsal, it was a very quick, deep dive into the material and the original text. The film, a lot of stuff was censored out.
Yeah, that's true.
So we went right into the rape and the domestic violence and the rage and the passion that immediately wasn't like the film.
Right.
In the text, Stanley is a real son of a bitch. And Williams is writing about that you represent society and the villainy of society oppressing this sensitive soul. And to some degree, are you conscious of that, that you're perceived by Williams as a villain?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and there have been different interpretations where he is more the villain. I mean, if you look at the history of this play, and you, of course, know very well that, you know, Marlon Brando brought a sensitivity to it, a vulnerability to it, and the brutality. And I know after that, when Anthony Quinn came in, they wanted to kind of just shift the focus again to more of the brutal side, to make him more of that villain, and not to feel even sorry for him. But he's a beast. He's a monster. But he's a human. There's a reason for all of this, and there's a.
Yeah, I saw Alec Baldwin, and he was just pure brute because I think he hated
saw that.
Jessica Lange off stage. So
Oh, was that right?
it's like, oh, that was pretty much. Steve, but I want to ask you, you've had the rights to these Tennessee Williams plays for a while, Cat on a Hot Tin
Right.
Roof and Streetcar. Did these plays mean something to you in your life? Did you pursue them because they were great titles, or because you were moved by these plays when you saw them in various productions? What's your attraction for
I
them?
thought that these plays could always translate well into any kind of cross or non-traditional casting. You know, who doesn't know a big daddy? You know, someone dysfunctional in the family.
Right.
I mean, that's across the board. Who doesn't know? Here's Stanley, a guy who just loves to bowl, play cards with his buddies, drink beer, and hang out with his wife. And Tennessee always wanted to do this. I mean, with a black cast.
Really?
It was first done in 1952 at the Ebony Showcase Theater in Los Angeles. It was produced by a guy who was an actor who starred in Amos and Andy. His name was Lightning. And he went on to make a fortune, and he bought this theater. And Audrey Wood, who was Tennessee's agent at the time, granted him the rights, and Tennessee was ecstatic. And he wanted Sidney Poitier to play the role of Stanley at the time. Unfortunately, Sidney wasn't available, but he had another actor, and it ran for 2 months at that time in the '52. That was a good run.
Good run, yeah.
And it came back again. So here we're bringing back the play with the element of New Orleans being a part of the character of the play as well, which wasn't in the movie. Terrence Blanchard's music, that whole feel of New Orleans and that soulfulness. So it resonates.
So there is a history here of it being non-traditionally cast, as they say.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no play that I think that should be culturally encoded. I mean, is there one way to do Hamlet? No. Is there one way to do Willie Loman?
White actors have been playing Othello since the beginning of time.
I'm not so sure we're there where we can have an all-white fences or something like that.
That's
Well, some plays don't some plays don't translate well.
But I mean, A Raisin in the Sun, I mean, you're not going to be able to do an all-white cast of A Raisin in the Sun. I mean, some of these plays...
There's some Irish plays you can't do as well.
Michael, yeah, Susan, here, what's interesting about this is, you know, at a certain point there's a heightened reality. I mean, if you're doing all-white Raisin in the Sun, that's a heightened reality. What's exciting about this is that there is an historical authenticity to casting A Streetcar Named Desire like this in New Orleans. If you know, and I know you know the culture of New Orleans, the mixture of the French and the Spanish and the Creole and the African and all of that, and the fact that there were free people of color, the gens de couleur libre, in New Orleans. So there were people, when Blanche Du Bois and Stella Du Bois speak of a Belle Rive, a place of wealth, that history, there were free people of color that had plantations and wealth. When she speaks of Shep Huntley, you can tell the historical references. There were black millionaires in early 1930s and 40s, like Shep Huntley. Great many people who are watching this and come to see the play don't realize that history. So this is more than hyperbole or gimmickry. It could be historically accurate.
Right. And Tennessee Williams, of course, would have known this world.
Exactly.
Tennessee was very much aware of, I think, race relations back then, because he himself was was an outsider, being a homosexual.
And I think the apartment that he lived in while he wrote Streetcar was owned by a free person of color. So some of the dialogue that he gives the Hubbles makes you wonder, this is a woman, what she might have yelled down the street, I made that spaghetti dinner and I ate it myself. This is stuff that he heard. And what's happening is that people think, the plot might be changed or historical authenticity. It just made it even more robust in a way. I mean, small shifts have been made in terms of what restaurant they could go to, because Galatoire's was segregated in 1951, but Dooky Chase did exist.
And still exists.
And still exists. So small things like that, just to even put the cherry on the cake. But otherwise, the language that's coming out of my mouth is written in the text, and it has even that more zhuzh to it, because it's surprising that he didn't write it for black people. I mean, some of the lingo is very culturally sounding specific.
He was a great writer. He had an ear for all that he was hearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please, you have to Google this. If you haven't seen this documentary, it's called Tennessee Williams South. possessive S, Tennessee Williams South. And in this documentary, they're interviewing Tennessee Williams, and the interviewer asks, where did you get your sayings? And he says, well, every Southerner has the flair for writing. He says, but I got my idioms without missing a beat. I got my idioms from black people. He said, my father come home and said, you look as nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof. He said, I got that from black people. So it's fascinating, because you're right. He knew that world, and he had an ear for it. It's fascinating.
I wanted to ask you now, I read in the New York Times the audience reaction.
Michael, really?
This moment happened. I have to ask you because it was a report in the New York Times. Tell us what happened in your reaction to it, in this early preview of Streetcar Named Desire.
When someone yelled out, you know,
So
to you.
you think you said Stella and someone said, I'm right here.
Yeah. On the balcony, I was like, really? No, I didn't stop it.
Well, that goes with bringing in new audiences.
Yes, right.
And it's really interesting. They did the same thing with Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. There was a scene where Big Daddy says to Big Mama, blow out the candles, blow them out. And someone yelled, oh, no, you don't.
Well, Stephen, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, because you have hit on something that no one else really has gotten before, that there is an African-American audience out there for Broadway shows. They have the money to go to see them. Because for the longest time in this industry, people would say, well, we do these August Wilson plays, and the black audience is very small for them. We have to get the white audience. And it was always, the black audience doesn't have money to go see them. You've found the formula for it with Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which was a success, and now this play.
They do go. I've always said there's an audience between Tyler Perry and August Wilson that hasn't been addressed. People will, you build a field, they will come. Again, it resonates. The stories resonate. It's not out of context. You don't have to have just a color purple, or musical. They will come for a great play, and these are great. You know, you have a buffer here. Demographically, you have the grandmothers and the fathers who perhaps saw the play, but they all relate to the movie, and you have a younger generation who has no reference whatsoever to the play, but they want to see Blair and Nicole.
Right, right.
And that brings in that kind of audience. In London, we had a study done over there. 78% of the ticket buyers to the Novello Theatre were brand new to the West End. So they are coming out.
When you had James Earl Jones and was it Felicia?
Felicia Rashad and Adrian Lester.
Right.
And
Sanaa
Sanaa
Lathan.
Lathan.
Yeah. What's the audience reaction to your character? Do you get a sense? Do they like Blanche? Do they think Blanche is manipulating him? Do they resist Blanche?
I think that Emily has really tried to make sure we fill Tennessee's shoes in his vision. So what happens to people is that even if they show up thinking about race as a white audience member or even a black audience member, the journey, if we're doing our job right, the journey is taken. And the race is the last thing you think about.
It really is.
Thank you.
It really is.
It's the breakdown of all of the elements Tennessee wanted to explore in human nature. And at scene 11, the last thing you're thinking about is black or white. You're thinking about the heart of somebody being ripped out. Everybody has lost.
And I'm thinking about that bastard Stanley punching Stella and then raping you, and how, well, you know, can't we progress past that? But that's
and even people feeling sorry for Stanley, that he's living with himself and unable to manage his rage. I mean, when we do our job right, it's a visual on where human beings, what human beings are capable of.
Who you sympathize with.
Yeah.
All right, it's a terrific new production of Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire at the Broadhurst Theater, starring the very beautiful Nicole Ari Parker as Blanche, the very hunky, handsome, wife-beater, T-shirt wearing Blair Underwood as Stanley, and the forever dapper Dan of Broadway, Mr. Stephen Bird, the producer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being our guests
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you, Mike.
It's been great.
Pleasure, pleasure.
Stella? Stella, sweetheart?
Quit that howling out there and go back to bed!
Eunice, I want my baby down with me. Stella! Stella!
Coming down, so you quit, or you'll get the law on you!
Stella!
I play it the company way. Executive policy is by me okay.
Susan, we have one of not only one of our favorite guests here, but also someone I think is a very good friend. He is absolutely terrific in various parts in How to Succeed. He's not really trying.
He's Wally Womper.
He's Wally Womper.
And Rosemary, which not too many people know.
That's right. You could also see him on the Imus in the Morning program and stand-up comedy. He is the great...
Along with you.
Along with me on the Imus in the Morning program
That's right.
occasionally. He is the great, great character actor and comedian Rob Bartlett. Welcome back to
Yeah, now it gets to you.
Wally Wamper and Rosemary, there you are.
It's quite a little triumvirate there.
Now, Rob, I'm not sure people know this about you, but you're a very well-known stand-up comedian, but it's acting and Broadway that you really wanted to be in when you were growing up, right?
Yeah, that was the reason why I kind of got into stand-up in the first place. Was I thought that was going to be a shortcut to an acting career. As Humphrey Bogart says in Casablanca about the waters, I was misinformed. Yeah, because I mean, it was when I was a kid, I was always.
You grew up here in New York and many of the Broadway shows.
Brooklyn, Long Island, you know, the traditional borough, suburban upbringing, and you know, from an early age was the drama club geek and the, you know.
Were you a singer and a dancer early on?
It depends on your definition of singer and dancer. If you mean somebody who can't carry a tune and has 2 left feet, then yes.
But you were always going to play character actor parts. I mean,
Oh yeah, I don't think there was any any threat of me being a matinee idol. You know, I mean, I don't think I was ever going to be the romantic lead in anything. You know, unless that Marty musical ever happened.
Now, was your first Broadway show Little Shop of Horrors?
No, my first Broadway show. Susan, thank you for bringing up the memory. Was something that I wrote.
Oh, right.
Oh, of course.
Called More to Love, a Big Fat Comedy, which ran for 17 previews and 4 performances, which the pull quote for the New York Times was, "Avert your eyes," which is not something that you can exactly hang off a marquee.
Don Imus never lets you live that down. Every time I go on to talk about Broadway, he brings up Rob's big flop, More to Love.
He brings it up every day at work. So I mean, don't forget you're on that flop I invested in. Yeah. So that was the Broadway debut, and then I spent a year licking my wounds from that, during which time I did an off-Broadway production of a play called Tabletop.
That's where we met, and you
That's
were
where we
terrific.
met, yeah.
Absolutely terrific.
Which was a terrific experience, and then that led to doing a staged reading of Fade Out, Fade In, that wound up turning into me doing an encores production of Golden Boy.
Right.
That
I saw that, yeah.
Walter Bobby directed, and the summer after Golden Boy had gone up, Brad Garrett was supposed to step in and play Amos, but he got the Jackie Gleason television biography film,
Right.
and so he couldn't do it, and so they were kind of stuck, and Walter called me and said, you know, why don't you go down, see the matinee, and after the matinee is over, why don't you go up and sing for Bob Billing, and you know, if you can sing the song.
Because Joel Grey, that non-dancer we had in there before, so we need another non-dancer to follow
That
Joel
was exactly
Grey.
right. You know, because whenever people think of me, they right away think of Joel Grey. Because we're like this. We're really separated at birth. And so that's what I did. And
But let me ask you this interesting, because you said you started out wanting to be on Broadway. Did you make the rounds? Did you go to auditions and you were not getting anywhere, and that's when stand-up comedy?
it all kind of happened simultaneously. I took a year leave of absence from college when I was at Alfred University. And I was ostensibly going to make money to go back because I'd lost my scholarship because I'd kind of flunked out. And just a little minor problem. And during that period, I was working as an elevator operator and a kind of a handyman and one of those lobby guys at 1775 Broadway. And at the same time, I was going to open mics at night doing stand-up. But I was doing open calls. I'd get backstage, and so I auditioned for Beatlemania. Because I used to be in a Beatle tribute band when I was growing up.
And you do a Ringo Starr character.
I do.
Imus now.
Actually, because I am a drummer, so I was. But unfortunately, I was too tall to be the drummer, and I can play bass, but I can't play bass and sing, so I couldn't really be Paul. Although I kind of look a lot like Paul. I know people say that all the time, but I was too tall for Ringo. And then I also auditioned for an open call of Grease, Danny Zuko, which I think I got 4 notes out of the audition. It was on stage at the Golden. It was like maybe a half a measure of I'm All Alone at a drive-in movie, and it was like, next! But, and then stand-up kind of took off, and I never wound up going back to college.
And were you, stand-up something that you wanted to do? You wanted to be a
Kind of. I mean, it was the early '80s. You know, it was late '70s, early '80s. So it was really the big comedy boom at that time. So I was fortunate enough to get in at a time when it was really hot, and especially on Long Island, we kind of made our own rules at the time because we were really the only game in town.
Right.
So I started out with folks like Jackie the Joke Man and Eddie Murphy and and folks like that, and wound up meeting people in the city at Catch a Rising Star and the Comic Strip and the Improv because they would want to come out to Long Island and start getting paying gigs, and that wound up leading to work on the road. And so I was on the road as a stand-up for about 10 years.
Really?
The thing I marvel at with you, you're on Imus in the morning, and then you're doing this very energetic role in How to Succeed. How do you do it?
I nap.
Your nap?
Yeah, you're not. You're a
Are we
power
interrupting
nap,
with your, I mean, will you
No,
have a nap
I
today?
usually nap when I'm driving to and from. As slamming my CRV onto the on-ramp of the Triborough Bridge will attest. Yeah, I like to take little cat naps. The Rumble Strip wake-up call is one of my favorite things in the world.
So when do you get up in the morning?
I get up at 4.
Yeah, and then you go in and do Imus.
I do Imus, and then sometimes I'll go home and take a nap.
Then where do you live?
On days like today,
you live
Long
in
Island.
town? On Long Island. So you go back to Long
No,
Island?
back to Long Island, or on days like today, I'll stay here, and then I'll go, nap in the dressing room. And then, we'll do the show, and I'll go home and get to bed around midnight, and 12:30 sometimes, and then
up you
get
go.
up and start again.
And you don't have any problems with it?
I'll sleep when I'm dead, Susan.
I've heard that phrase before.
One of the things, though, I think that you are, when I watch you in How to Succeed in Business, you really represent to me kind of another era of performer that we really don't have anymore. I mean, nobody delivers an Abe Burrows line like Rob Bartlett. There's that great moment in the show where you say, try the haddock sandwich early in the week. Do you feel a kinship with those great old Broadway performers like a David Burns and
Stubby K.
Stubby K, all of those guys?
Those are all the kind of guys that I cut my teeth on. Watching the 4:30 movie when I was a kid when they would run, Little Abner and Guys and Dolls and all those great movie musicals. And, went to school on all those guys, and the Marx Brothers and all the traditional comics and comic actors. And so it's kind of ingrained, I guess.
In my plotting of your day, I forgot, when do you get time to write?
See, that's what's great about being Trimble and Whomper, because I'm in like the first part of the first act and the last part of the second act. So I have this hour and 15-minute place in the middle. I've done my research up, hopefully by that point, and so I can spend the time in between to write the material.
To whom or what do you owe your discipline that you can do such a thing?
The fact that you have to come up with a piece of material every single day.
But come on, you have had
Imus,
that.
if it wasn't for Imus, I would not be, where I am today, and I wouldn't, be able to do what I'm doing today, because...
That's an ironclad kind of thing, and you are on a schedule, and you have to come up with a fresh...
But you have this aptitude.
And fortunately, because, having that challenge every day is what hopefully, makes me better.
Well, I think you're selling yourself short, though. Obviously, you brought this talent to that job situation.
Well, talent is only, what is it a producer once told me, is that a script is only good if I produce it. It's only worth something if I produce it. So, the same thing is true with talent. A talent is only good if somebody's going to do something with it. There are a lot of really talented people sitting in their mother's basements going, I could be a star. And, it's never going to happen. So.
No, that's true, though, but it's all of the great comedy writers. Well, you think of Neil Simon, Larry Gelbart, they were all on the Sid Caesar show. It's a bit like being on the Imus show, where you are expected to deliver a bit on a regular basis.
When you're a writer, you really need to write every day, otherwise...
Yeah, it goes away. But I mean, I sometimes when I've been on the show or watched the show, Donald just criticize your routines right on the show. Does he look at them before, read them before? Is he
sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't, and sometimes he just likes to poke the stick in the cage,
Hard to imagine a person on TV or radio being like that.
I don't know.
Or in print.
That's right.
Wow. All right.
All right, Rob Bartlett, it's always great fun having you on. What are you going to do after How to Succeed? Is there a honeymoon in Vegas? I know you were...
I did a lab, they said, which was kind of like a workshop, except they don't have to pay if something happens with it.
Precisely.
Of Honeymoon in Vegas, which is just a terrific piece with Tony Danza, Andrew Bergman, who wrote and directed the movie, who also wrote The In-Laws, the single funniest movie ever made, hands down.
Zigzag, zigzag.
Yeah, yeah. Serpentine shell. Serpentine.
That's right.
And Jason Robert Brown wrote this incredible score of the most catchy songs. I mean, it's just, they're still in my head. So that's on the double boiler. We'll see how that
Fingers
works.
crossed.
We'll see,
Yeah.
you know. It's show business. Who knows? I could be the guy with the bucket and the broom following the elephant.
No, wait, that's my
I wish
job.
you could tell that joke on the air, but you can't, I'm afraid.
Well, last time I got to say the F word, so.
You and Elaine Stritch, the only people who get the dispensation.
Thank you.
All right, Rob Bartlett, you can see him on the Imus in the Morning program every morning. Great to see you, Rob.
Thanks.
Good luck.
I play it the company way. Executive policy is by me, okay.
How can you get anywhere?
Junior, have no fear. Whoever the company fires, I will still be here.
You will still be
Year after year after fiscal, never take a risk all year.
You can sign up for viewer updates at theatertalk.org.
Or you can Twitter us. Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.